But today, I'm the greatest of all time. Thank you.
Never stop, I'll get it if I want it. Gotta make to myself a promise. I won't quit, keep going till I got it. I won't give up till I'm on top.
Yo, no, I ain't the type to give up. If I do something, man, I do it till I get what I want. I turn a business out of nothing into something I love. I got a poker face, but honestly, I'm not one to bluff. I flip a switch, never miss, man, I always stay up. Don't let them see you, always have a plan to stay tough. This life ahead of you ain't easy, it was built to be rough. But that's what makes a personality, is tragedy, bruh. So keep your head on your shoulders. Now we ain't out here moving rocks, we out here moving boulders. Now we ain't getting posterized, we out here making posters. And we ain't got nothing to hide, we move forward like soldiers. You better wake up for the pay stub, or you'll pay up. Don't make love to the game, bruh, to game up. Change up, rearrange stuff to your greatness. Same us for the way up, play the game, bruh.
Never stop, I'll get it if I want it. Gotta make to myself a promise. I won't quit, keep going till I got it. I won't give up till I'm on top, yeah.
You know I'm always honest, there ain't no way I'll never stop it.
I won't quit, keep going till I got it. I won't give up till I'm on top,
I'm always flirting with pain, she like to hurt me and maim. I'm always working to change, but she's still lurking the same. I keep on building a dynasty while the haters be trying me, but they hate from inside.
Good afternoon, and welcome to the weekend recap here on the ESEN Network. Stat guy Dustin Reese, along with the bearded wonder Jay McLovin. Jay, I know you got a surgery coming up, so how are we doing?
Yeah. Man, first of all, man, it's good to hang out on Mondays without Matt.
Hey, he's in his busy season right now, so we're.
I know. I just thought I'd throw it in because they're probably wondering where Matt's at, and clearly neither one of us are Matt. But anyway, no, I'm doing well, man. And yeah, I got my surgery. It is slated for Friday morning, and I'm a little nervous, but you know what? 2 good knees is better than 1, so let's get it done.
Yeah, and we're gonna just start with the NFL, and I've not necessarily the combine per se, but there's been some NFL news that's actually happened the last really 24 hours, and that starts with Mike Evans, who actually ended up signing a 2-year. I think it was 2-year 43 or 2-year 53.
52. 2 years at $52 million.
With Tampa Bay Buccaneers to remain in Tampa. To me, that's actually kind of a surprising deal, because I have a feeling had he waited till free agency started, he could have got a bigger deal and possibly could have landed with, I'm not going to say Tampa Bay's not playoff contenders, because they have made the playoffs the last couple of years without Tom Brady. So, I mean, at least in that division, you're going to be a playoff contender. But I think he could have landed with somebody as like more of a Super Bowl contender had he waited a little bit. But you just got to give Mike Evans some credit to this, because that just shows you what he feels about Tampa Bay, and that he ultimately, it seems like he wants to finish his entire career in Tampa Bay.
Yeah, I believe that. I do think that he does want to finish his career in Tampa Bay, and I think that's why he got the deal done for sure. I guess for me, it's more along the lines of, is he really a $26 million a year guy? And I like Mike Evans. I think he's a good wide receiver, but me personally, I don't think he's a little bit longer in the tooth now at this point, and so I don't know if he's a little bit older that he's quite $26 million.
Yeah, the whole wide receiver market is going to be interesting, and I think a lot of that hinges on what Justin Jefferson's going to get when he signs his extension. Because right now you have a bunch of wide receivers in that $18 to $24 million range who are good number one wide receivers, but then you have Justin Jefferson, who's ultimately going to set the market. And it's just a matter of what his market's going to be when they get him extended. So at this point, yes, I don't know if he's worth $26 million a year, but when you look at how he's played his entire career, he's had 1,000 yards every season he's been in the NFL. And at this point, I think he will be a Hall of Famer when he's done, just because the guy consistently puts up 1,000 yards. Even if he's not a first ballot Hall of Famer, I think he still gets in. So he is worth at least, I would say, 20 to 22 million. But for a 2-year deal, if you're going to overpay for a guy, I'm okay with overpaying for Mike Evans, because at least you know what you're going to get out of him.
No, yeah, I agree with you. And I think more so along the lines of, like you just said, since he signed for $26 million a year, what is that going to mean for Justin Jefferson? Because Justin Jefferson is going to probably sign for way more than that, right? I mean, you got to imagine. I mean, he's really going to set the market when it comes his time for contract.
Yeah, he's going to get 30, and everyone said that you should never pay a wide receiver $30 million a year, which I agree. You never should pay a wide receiver $30 million a year, but he's going to get 30 million. And then the question is, does Jamar Chase get 30 million? Does anybody else get 30 million? Which,
yes,
in my opinion, if anyone is worthy of $30 million, it is Jefferson. I don't think Jamar Chase or anybody else should get to 30, but you know how the league works. When somebody gets paid, the next person due is always going to outdo them.
Yeah, you know who I think deserves a good contract as well, and is, in my opinion, not talked about nearly enough, is DK Metcalf. That guy has still got incredible speed. He's strong. He's physical. He can get yards after the catch with no problem. I mean, this guy ran like a 4.2 something at just recently, not even that long ago. He was out there running with track stars in the track, in track arena, and he's hanging with them. Like, these are guys that run for a living, and he's hanging with them. Like I said, the guy's big, he's physical, he's got great hands. How is this guy not in this conversation for getting close to 30 million?
Well, I mean, you got to remember, he signed a 3-year, $71 million extension last year.
Yeah, he did.
So he's getting about $24 million a year right now.
Right.
So he signed his first extension last year.
Yeah. And do you think, I mean, like, there's no way in hell you can tell me Mike Evans is better than DK Metcalf. I will argue that point all day that he's not. So I wonder, I guess, for DK, well, do you think he'll try to restructure or try to get his contract amended to be in that group of wide receivers that are getting paid that kind of money?
I don't necessarily know, and the only reason why I would argue that Mike Evans is a little bit better than DK Metcalf is you have to look at the quarterbacks that Mike Evans had before Tom Brady got there. DK Metcalf at least has had Russell Wilson and a revived Geno Smith for his entire career. Mike Evans had nobody for 5 or 6 years before Tom Brady got there, and he still put up the numbers he put up. Now, I mean, obviously with Tom Brady and Baker Mayfield, you can make the case that DK Metcalf has had worse quarterback play than what Mike Evans has had the last 5 years. But when you look at Mike Evans' first 5 years of his career, he had one of the worst. I mean, you had Jameis Winston, who half the time was throwing it to the wrong team. Then after Jameis Winston, they went through like a plethora of backup quarterback options that were just filling in as a starter at that point. And yet all you knew was Mike Evans was going to give you 90 catches, 1,000 yards, and like 10 to 12 touchdowns a year.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing with Mike Evans is, I would say the majority of his career, he really hasn't had a true quarterback, right? He's had Jameis Winston.
Winston for, I think, 2 years.
Yeah.
And Tom Brady for 3 years. And then Baker Mayfield for 4, or for 1. So 4 of his 10 years, he's had basically no quarterback.
I didn't see that. Well, yeah. I mean, I'm just saying that the Baker Mayfield side of it, though, I thought he should have done more not Baker Mayfield, excuse me, Tom Brady. I felt like he should have done a whole lot more with Tom Brady. But Tom Brady is not a long, he doesn't throw the bombs, right? He throws the short passes. So
that's where Rob Gronkowski came into play, though, because Rob Gronkowski took away some of the targets that Mike Evans would have had.
Well, that's true, too. I mean, that's a valid point. So I don't know, man. I mean, and then, of course, what's that going to mean for CeeDee Lamb when he comes up for contract? He's going to want that kind of money as well. I hope Jerry is smart enough to pay him. Jerry, and I think he will. I think Jerry has, CeeDee Lamb is one of those flashy guys, and Jerry likes to keep him paid the flashy guys. So I think he will get the money. But wow, man, with Justin Jefferson at the helm, and now you have what's his name on the who's the opposite one that you have on the other side of that?
Addison.
Yeah. How do you feel about that? Because you guys lost Adam Thielen for Addison to come in and be the air replacement to him.
And I mean, Jordan Addison put up better numbers than Adam Thielen did as a rookie the last 3 years that Thielen's played.
Yeah.
I mean, I was sad to see Adam Thielen go because he's been such a part of that team for like 8 or 9 years. He was born and raised in Minnesota. He was a Division II college star in Minnesota. So he was kind of that hometown guy that you think of that literally grew up rooting for the Vikings and he got a chance to play for the Vikings. But Minnesota needed to get younger at that wide receiver position. They needed to give Jefferson more help because Adam Thielen at one point in his career, Adam Thielen was kind of that deep ball threat. But the last 3-4 years of his career, he was kind of more of that possession receiver just to kind of move the chains and keep possessions going, which it's good to have a guy like that. But Minnesota's got TJ Hawkinson for that now. So if you're going to be an Adam Thielen type of receiver, you need another one of those guys that can help stretch the field and take the pressure off of Jefferson, which Jordan Addison did this year. He had, I think, 904 yards receiving as a rookie this year. He led all rookie wide receivers with 11 touchdowns. So, I mean, the guy produced, and it's going to be interesting to see what he does in Minnesota for the next several years because KJ Osborne's a free agent this year, so we don't know if Minnesota is going to bring him back or kind of what the plan is for him. But if Minnesota ends up moving on from Justin Jefferson at some point, is Jordan Addison going to be the guy that can be an ultimate number one?
Yeah. Yeah. And so we'll see what Minnesota does. Again, you guys obviously, I think you're still hurting at the run game on the offensive side. I think if you can solidify that run game, then I think you guys will be good to go, right?
I mean, I'm happy they cut Alexander Madison, so that at least gives Ty Chandler some more reign.
And there's a lot of running backs out there, to be quite honest with you, that are going to be available if you want to make a serious run, right? I mean, Eckler's out there.
Saquon and Eckler.
And then you got Pollard. I mean, you could make a move on Pollard, which I think would be a great running back, because he's healthy, he's young, he's elusive. I think that would be a great addition over there for you guys. Hopefully, we'll see what the Cowboys do. I don't know if they're going to really try to re-sign him. I think they're going to try to make a move on Derrick Henry and roll that direction.
Right. And then some other news over the weekend in the NFL was just when you thought that Justin Fields was on the verge to going to the Atlanta Falcons, it seems like the Atlanta Falcons have zero interest in Justin Fields anymore. And according to reports, they are more willing to give a veteran quarterback, as in Kirk Cousins or Russell Wilson, a deal before they would trade for Justin Fields. And now it looks like the Bears are either stuck with Justin Fields or the Raiders and Steelers seem to be the two teams now that are kind of more into Fields than what the Falcons were.
Right.
Going into the offseason, I said if Kirk Cousins does not re-sign with Minnesota, he was going to end up in Atlanta, which I kind of still see that because when you look at the Falcons and when you look at that roster, they're the most talented team in the NFC South, top to bottom. But the only thing they were lacking last year was a quarterback.
Right.
Even if Kirk Cousins is not 100%, or even if he does not play at the level he played the last couple of years in Minnesota, he's still a better option than what Desmond Ridder was. And even an 80% Kirk Cousins gets Atlanta into the playoffs last year. So I think Atlanta might be looking to go that route just because Russell Wilson is a very similar quarterback to Desmond Ridder, so that may not fit into their system that much. But at this point, if I'm Chicago, and knowing that I have that number one pick, and knowing that everyone expects the Bears to take Caleb Williams if the Bears hold on to that number one pick, you need to talk to the Raiders and you need to talk to the Steelers and figure out what they're willing to give you for Justin Fields, because if you cannot pull off a trade before the draft starts, there's no way you can go into the NFL season with both Justin Fields and Caleb Williams on your roster.
Yeah, and that's the thing, too. I mean, when you look at Atlanta, Raheem Morris pretty much said that, that's the only thing he feels right now that his team needs to be in serious contention for the playoffs next year is a field general. And I kind of agree with him. He's got all of the tools and all the weapons over there, right? Robinson and, company. So London and Pitts. I mean, I like to see him use Pitts more. Hopefully Cousins can get Pitts more involved in the receiving game because I think that guy is a heavily underutilized weapon. So, I think Cousins going over there. As long as Cousins can stay healthy and stay off the injury report, I mean, he makes Atlanta a very dangerous team, to be honest with you.
Yeah. And then did you hear about the Zach Wilson news today?
Well, I heard Zach Wilson, like they said that his agent was talking about putting him on the trade block.
Well, not only have the Jets kind of approved his request to go look for another job, but when you kind of look at his struggles, I don't think he gets another job. I think he's going to be a backup. So now Zach Wilson and his agent are discussing going to the UFL to have Zach Wilson have a chance to showcase like what he can do with less talent around him. And if he can show that he's a successful quarterback with less talent around him, that should tell NFL teams that my quarterback just went into the UFL and did what he did with a lot less talent than what you guys have on that roster. He deserves a chance to be with somebody.
Yeah, absolutely. Here's the thing with that. This is what I like it, actually. I like it a lot. I would, if I was him, I would much rather go to the UFL and be a starter than go someplace and be a backup, honestly, because you're not getting any exposure. You're not getting anything, out there to be seen. So what are you really doing? You're just sitting there riding the pint? No. Well, the only way you get better at your craft is actually playing in games.
Yep.
And you're not going to get better just riding the pine, waiting for something to happen. So, yeah, the exposure that the UFL is going to give him, the ability to go back there and say, okay, look, this is what I can do. The Jets kind of screwed me over if that's what he really thinks. Let's do this. And it's true. If you show out, you're going to get another opportunity. I mean, look at Jim Kelly. Jim Kelly came out of the USFL and then went to the Buffalo Bills and had a great career. So, you can take one step back if you really think it's taking a step back. I think it's taking a step back to become a backup quarterback on an NFL franchise where nobody's seeing me play versus going to another league where I can play and showcase my talents for the following year.
Well, look at PJ Walker. When the XFL came back in 2020, the guy was basically a practice squad player, goes to the Houston Roughnecks and throws 18 touchdowns and 3 interceptions in the 5 games in the XFL, and then ends up signing with the Panthers, and now he started 14 games between the Panthers and Browns the last couple of years.
Right. And then here's the thing too, right? If I look at a couple of things. Number one, if Bryce Young doesn't work out in Carolina, by the time he goes to USFL and if he balls out in UFL and Bryce Young has another subpar year, they may be wanting to trade Bryce Young, bring in him, and do that route. Or maybe if they keep Fields and don't trade him, and if Fields has another crappy year, but he balls out over there, maybe the Chicago takes a chance on him. I mean, there's always places in the NFL where you can come back and make a name if somebody else is not performing well.
Exactly. And now, and before we get into baseball now, I want to touch on one of your guys.
That's
Mr. Xavier Worthy, who set the NFL record for the 40-yard dash time at the Combine this weekend.
Mm-hmm.
And heading into the draft, you didn't really hear Xavier Worthy's name mentioned that much among the top receivers. It was either Rome Odunze, Malik Neighbors, Marvin Harrison Jr., or Keon Coleman were kind of the big four. And then you had Brian Thomas out of LSU and Xavier Worthy were kind of that 5 and 6 where they were kind of possible late first round, early second round guys. But now you see the 40 time that Xavier Worthy ran. I have a feeling Xavier Worthy is now going to start working his way into these top 3, top 4 conversations because everyone knows that speed kills in the NFL. Mm. And I don't think anybody realized how fast Xavier Worthy was until this Combine. And now when you look at how big of a receiver Worthy is, he may even start surpassing guys like Odunze and Neighbors early on in the first round because you have that kind of size with that kind of speed, you're going to be a matchup nightmare.
Right. And I don't know, at what point at the Combine, they also do route running and things like that, correct?
Yes.
So I think that's really going to be, for Worthy, I think that's the biggest thing, right? Speed is number one because you can't teach it. You either have it or you don't have it. You can teach route running. You can work with a guy and get his route running where it needs to be. I think for Xavier Worthy, how far he goes up the draft board is going to depend on how he does in his route running at the Combine, right? Mm-hmm. That's going to be the next step. Okay, clearly at 4.21, this guy has got speed. So we don't have to, okay, that's one check, but that's one block that's checked off. He's got height. He's got good hands. Okay, those are other things that are checked off. Now, let's see how he does in the route run. If this guy goes out and runs those routes correctly, oh, yeah. I mean, seriously, I think, I don't know if he challenges Marvin Harrison Jr. I think he's kind of solidified himself at that spot. But I wouldn't be surprised if he goes at the number 2 wide receiver off the board, depending on his route running.
Yeah, and like watching Xavier Worthy play, especially against Washington in the national semifinal game, you saw how good of a wide receiver he was, and no one's going to take away the fact that he had an incredible year. But at the same time, when you watched him run on that field, you knew he was fast, but he did not look as fast as what he ran in that 40 time. So that kind of makes me wonder, had he showcased that kind of speed all season long, where would he be in the wide receiver ranks right now? Would he have gotten more targets? Would he have putting up bigger yards than what he picked up?
I mean, that's a whole lot of what ifs. And you're right. I mean, there's a lot of things that could have happened. Maybe it does, right? Maybe the chemistry just wasn't completely there with the quarterback, or the quarterback's trust in him wasn't quite there, and that could have affected things. I mean, there's any number of things, right? But the past is the past. Now we're looking at the future. And I will tell you this. I'll tell you this even. If I'm Chicago Bears, and I got 2 picks in the draft, which I think they have the number 1, and what's the other one? I think
number 1 and number 9 right now.
Number 1 and number 9. Okay, I don't see 2 wide receivers going in the first 9 spots.
I see 3.
You see 3 wide receivers in the first 9?
Because Harrison goes top 3.
Okay.
Malik Neighbors probably goes top 6, top 7, and then Rome Odunze will probably be top 10.
So my point is this. If I'm Chicago, number 1, I don't believe in Justin Fields. Straight up, don't. I think he's a bust. I think he's done. I think it's time to move on. So at that point, then you look at your scouting and say, okay, well, if he's not the one, who are we taking? I honestly think I would take Jaden Daniels. I take nothing against Michael Penix. I love Michael Penix. I think the guy's a hell of a thrower, things like that. But I do need a guy that can move around a lot. I need a guy that can scramble, can get away from things, because God knows Chicago. And that's another thing with Chicago. They got to work on their offensive line. But I don't know how you pass up on a good wide receiver at that number 9 spot to complement DJ Moore. I think you can get an offensive lineman in free agency, or maybe even a little bit later in that first round or second round of the draft. So if I'm them, like I said, if you like a James Worthy kind of guy, I think he'll be there at number 9. I think you take Jaden Daniels at 1. I come back and I grab Worthy at number 9. Or if and I don't know, because it's gonna be hard, right? Because if Odunze is there at number 9, who do you take? Do you take Odunze or do you take Worthy? But you know what Worthy's speed now is, right? And his height is.
And now we go to baseball, where you saw what the first of the big 4, Scott Boras-Klein, signed last week in Cody Bellinger, when he signed the 3-year, $80 million deal, basically a 1-year, $30 million deal with 2 opt-outs. Now client number 2 has come off the board, Matt Chapman. Similar deal to what Bellinger got. Chapman gets a 3-year, $53 million deal, but essentially a 1-year, $25 million deal, because the other 2 years are opt-out years, leaving J.D. Martinez, Blake Snell, and Jordan Montgomery as the final 3 of the big Boras clients left to sign. Knowing the deal that Bellinger got, knowing the deal that Chapman got, knowing that J.D. Martinez at 39 years old is not going to get more than a 1 or 2 year deal anyway, so I'm kind of going to leave him out of this conversation. But knowing what the deals that the other 2 got, do you see Blake Snell or Jordan Montgomery getting a 5-year deal from anybody at this point? Or do you think it's going to be a similar thing where whoever picks these guys up are going to sign him to a 3-year deal, basically with that opt-out after year 1, and have him re-hit the market? And do you think that would be the smart thing for each one of these guys to do at this point, just so they can start playing?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Snell turned down or declined the Yankees offer at 3 years. What was it, 3 years, $150 million?
I think it was 5 at 150 he turned down.
Yeah. So if you're turning that down, and you haven't, and you weren't getting any bites before that, well, then that just kind of automatically leads you to the conclusion that he's going to get more of a Bellinger 3-year, I don't know, $80 million with 3 opt-outs, right? And then maybe he can opt out and do a better contract. But let's be honest, if he was really going to get the Quan, I call it the Quan. If you're going to get the Quan, it would have already come by now. And the fact that you turned down that with the Ranger or with the Yankees, you're going to get less money in less years. I just don't see anybody else coming to the table that's going to offer.
Right. Do you think it would be smart for either one of these guys to take the short-term deal just so they can start playing right now? Or do you think if they hold out to try to get one of these long-term deals that they will get one?
Yeah, no, it's not going to happen. If it was, like I said, the long-term deal was coming, it would have already come. They're not. What's the incentive to hold out longer? You know, if it was going to come, it was going to come. The market has already spoken. Like they say in real estate, the market is speaking. You just don't want to hear what the market has to say. So I tell you right now, he should have taken, and he's going to be an idiot for not taking that Yankees 3 years at 150. That's the deal he should have taken with. And I would even have said 3 years at 150. Hey, after my second year, I want to opt out just so I can prove myself a little bit more and leave myself an open opportunity to make even more money. So I would have taken 3 at 150, and I would have told the Yankees, hey, I'll take your offer, but I do need to opt out. You give me an opt out, and we got a done deal. That's what he should have taken because the market has told him that.
Exactly. Last thing I'm going to touch on before we head off today is LeBron James becoming the first ever player with 40,000 regular season points. And I mean, when you play 20 years, it kind of makes that feat not as special, in my opinion, when you play that long, just because you've played 20 years. And when you're as good of a player as he is, I would hope you can get to 20,000 points. But at the same time, it is still an impressive feat. Obviously, we know that no other player has ever gotten this number. And whatever you say, some people say he is the greatest of all time. Some people, kind of like me, still feel other people are better than he is. And I just have to look at the generation that one of those players played in compared to the generation now. And the generation of the 90s was a far more physical generation of basketball than what the basketball we see now is. And I would like to have seen if LeBron James could have lasted 20 years during the 90s, or vice versa, if Michael Jordan could have played 20 years in today's league. And on that, if Michael Jordan could have played 20 years in today's NBA, would he have done what LeBron James has done? And on the flip side, would LeBron James have been able to do what he's done in this generation? So I'm not going to take anything away from the accomplishment because it's still a hell of an accomplishment. But I just kind of want your thoughts on that. If you kind of see it the same way that I do, where it's just two different generations of basketball. So I think each one of them should be considered the greatest of all time at this point because each generation was different.
Yeah, this is the way I try to look at it, man. I always said stats speak volumes, right? Number one, congratulations, LeBron James, for hitting 40,000 points. That's an incredible feat, no matter what anybody says. That's incredible. And I would tell you this, stat guy, if he was hitting 40,000 points and let's say his field goal percentage was around 30, 32%, maybe even 33%, somewhere in that neighborhood, then I would say he's just kind of hang on, and maybe it really isn't that impressive. But I will tell you this, and I am not a LeBron fan. I'm not. I mean, I am. I think LeBron's a great player, but I think what's ruined me with LeBron is all the MJ comparisons. And that's really what kind of made me go sour on it. And that's not really LeBron James's fault. That's just people's fault for trying to always compare him to MJ. But what I will say this in LeBron's defense, he's averaging 25 points a game. He's got 7 rebounds and 7 assists. That's a pretty good stat line at 20 years in the league. But the most impressive stat line, and the reason why I think it's actually okay that he stayed as long as he is and why it's still an impressive 40,000 points is because he did it shooting 52.7% from the field. So I'm saying this, stat guy, if you're giving me 26 points a night at 52% field goal, then automatically it makes that 40,000 points seem a little bit more impressive because you're not just trying to do it to get garbage time points. You're actually doing it at a still great shooting level, No,
I agree. And that's kind of why I'm done with the whole comparison. I have my opinions on each player. I have my opinions on who I think is the better of the two. But at the same time, I also look at the generation that they played in too. And I do that with every sport. Like when everyone compares like Jerry Rice to Randy Moss and some of these other people, they played in two different generations. You can't, unless you saw them go head to head against each other for 5, 6, 7, 8 years, it's very hard to say who is the best that we've ever seen because you need to see how they would play against each other. Yes.
And it is. It's a different game. The 3-point line is 10 times more being used than it was back in MJ's time period. I mean, it just wasn't a 3-point time back then, So that equates obviously to a lot of points when you're hitting it at the 3-point line, right? So
that's all the time Jay and I got for you today. Thanks for popping into the weekend recap. And Jay, I'll see you, I think, tomorrow for a little bit.
Yep. It'll be good.